What's up, people of YouTube? Welcome to episode 67 of the Bros Talking Soccer podcast. Dave Knittel here with my brothers Christian and Matt. We have a special guest, Mark Lawson from Game Day Taurus with us this week. Mark, say hello.
Hi, everybody.
There you go. That's Mark. This is Christian.
He's
here.
Actually here in San Jose today.
Oh, yeah. Flew all the way out just for this podcast.
Just for
the podcast. Matt, say hello.
Hello.
And there's Matt. There you go. That's what he looks like. He's home from for a break. All right. So with that, we're all ready to roll. We got our topics. We got our trivia question, and ready to get this fun started. So let's get into things. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 67 of the Bros Talking Soccer podcast. My name is Dave Knittel, and I am here with my brothers Christian and Matt to discuss stories from around the soccer world. We are joined by a very special guest, Mark Lawson from Game Day Tourist, a sports travel blog this week. Mark, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. We've just got rid of all the snow that was grinding the UK to a halt, so pretty pleased that life's going to get back to normal.
All right, nice. Do you want to give the people a little bit of background on Game Day Tourist?
Sure, yeah. So Game Day Tourist is my personal travel photo blog. It follows my adventures as I travel around the world, watching different sports in different locations. I like to post the photos of the places I visit, the stadiums, the arenas, and the games I watch. And the idea is hopefully to help introduce some people to new things that they don't know, they haven't seen before, and get them out there and seeing some games themselves.
Yeah, it's awesome. Definitely go check that out. I've read most of the articles you've put up, and I'm looking forward to the future ones. So everyone should definitely go check out Game Day Tourist. Christian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Dave. Out here in Cali, visiting you, filming this live. Can't be any better than that,
Yeah, I'm happy to have you here.
Life.
Yep. Matt, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Dave. I'm happy to be home from spring break from college. Getting home was a bit of a journey because there was all of Southeast PA was out of power. Trees were falling everywhere. Real bad weather, real bad storm hit the East Coast. So I'm glad to just be home now.
All right. Well, we're glad you're home safe. Guys, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you all for asking. Happy to have Christian here. And excited for this week. We filmed a Liverpool video yesterday for the Soccer Tavern. That was a lot of fun. I had some trouble saying some words, but we got through it eventually. So
Dave has never learned how to pronounce the word miracle, and I just want everyone out there to know
we're gonna have to put out the outtakes from that because I was really struggling there. But Christian, well, actually, hold up real quick before we get to our trivia question. I wanted to give quick thoughts and prayers to Davide Astoria's family. Really sad story came out. We woke up to 31-year-old current captain of Fiorentina in Italy. He passed away in his sleep last night, had a heart attack, all very suddenly. So just wanted to say, we feel for anybody affected by the tragedy and want to send our condolences to him and his family.
And respect to all of Serie A for postponing every game today. Yeah. It's really nice way to remember him.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so with that, Christian, do you want to give our trivia question for this week?
So India in the 1950 World Cup withdrew. Do you guys know why they withdrew from the World Cup?
Okay.
You do.
I do know. Yeah, I do know, but I did not say.
I know.
Does everybody know?
It's all right. Listeners may not know. So this will be fun for listeners.
I hate when that happens.
It's a great trivia question. All right. Before we get into our topics real quick, wanted to give a couple quick plugs. So we are partnered with Stadium Scene, as is Mark from Game Day Tourist. So that's how we all kind of know each other. But Stadium Scene is a travel guide for sports fans. So if you're headed to a stadium, so if Mark's headed to a stadium in the US, he may go check out Stadium Scene to check out, the restaurants and bars and different shops and things to do kind of around the stadium. So you definitely want to go check that out if you're visiting a stadium. I believe they're just in the US right now, but you definitely want to go check out stadiumscene.com for some of those. They have some awesome reviews. Additionally, they've partnered with content creators like us, like Mark, like other people who are putting out sports kind of related content at stadiumscene.tv. So you can check out podcasts, you can check out videos, you can check out blog posts and all of that. So definitely go give them a follow, check them out. The Lads podcast is really fun. They've been, shouting us out. We want to shout them out. And so they're a lot of fun. So definitely go check them out. Two more quick plugs for some of my projects. I am the founder of Fan Futsal, which is a simplified fantasy soccer website. We make it easy for all soccer fans to play. So we have you select teams instead of players, and we simplify the scoring. So we're doing a game right now, all of us, Mark's involved, the lads, DJ and Kate from Stadium Scene, and we'll hopefully be expanding that out. So that's a lot of fun. You should check that out. Finally, Soccer Tavern is a YouTube channel where we're making videos about the history, culture, and philosophy of the beautiful game. Right now, we're making club history videos. I alluded to it earlier. Liverpool will be coming out in a few weeks. This upcoming week, we have Everton and Huddersfield's history coming out. With that, let's get into our topics for this week. So I know that's why you guys are all here. Nottingham Forest recently came out and said that they're going to be offering discounted season tickets to youth fans. So anybody under the age of 11, it'll cost only £10 for a full season ticket, £50 for a season ticket for age 12 to 17, and then £100 for anyone 23 to 18. I don't know why I did reverse order there instead of 18 to 23. Weird. It was all over the place there. But so in this case, a kid could basically watch soccer for 20 years for less than £1,000. So really, really great stuff from them. Mark, you being over in England, I know that this is kind of something a little bit different. Not a lot of clubs are doing this. What's your takes on Nottingham Forest doing this?
Well, first of all, I think it's really good. I'm a season ticket holder at Tottenham, and I'd love for my season ticket to come down in price. Unfortunately, I can't see that's happening. I think it's a very clever marketing ploy by Forest. So there's obviously not as much demand for their season ticket as they have availability. So offering the cut price tickets for kids means that those kids need to be accompanied by adults, and those adults are going to be paying £300, £500 for their season ticket. So they're getting very good press for maybe something that's actually helping the club rather than purely for the fans.
That's a really interesting perspective. Hadn't really considered that. So I like that thought. Christian, your thoughts here?
That is a really good perspective. And it was nice to hear Mark talk because you talked for way too long.
I know.
I think it's an awesome idea. I think it's great for them to lower the price for kids. But although I see what Mark is saying, it is still lowering the price for kids. Would they have been charged at full price had they not done that? So it is benefiting the families, even though they are accompanied by an adult. It is a lower price overall for a family to buy tickets for season.
Fair enough. Matt, your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I think it's just what you guys said. It's a great marketing tactic. I think it's great. Kids, if you're watching, soccer through all the way up until you're 23, and then you're more likely to, be passionate about the club and more likely to get the, the adult membership. So I think it's just a great idea to get, the fans around for, as long as they can, and, just really develop a relationship with the club at the, reasonable cost.
Yeah, absolutely. My thoughts initially upon reading this were, kind of like, hook 'em young, which is a lot of marketing tactics where, you target kind of kids, and then as they grow up, they're familiar with it, and then you kind of have them, throughout the rest of their life. But Mark, you do bring up a good point. There may be other ways that the club can sort of financially offset this cost of giving discounted tickets here, but they may be drawing in more of the older adults to, that are paying the higher ticket prices. So I really like that thought, because I hadn't even considered it, so it's not just completely altruistic from Nottingham Forest. At the end of the day, they are still a business, and they are trying to make their money. Mark, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, just if it's a win for the club and a win for the fans, then brilliant. What more can you ask for?
Absolutely. Yeah. So win, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
Anything.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add?
No, I'm good.
Okay, let's stick in England and talk about a recent tweet from Romelu Lukaku. So a lot of European soccer players are huge fans of the National Basketball Association. I wanted to call it National Basketball League. That would have been wrong.
That would have been really
NBA, which is the American Professional Basketball League, best basketball players in the world. So Lukaku recently came out and said that he wants to have a Premier League All-Star game, North versus South. And so my first thoughts are, let's go to Matt first, because I know Matt's the biggest NBA fan. So Matt, what are your thoughts on a Premier League All-Star game? It would be North versus South. So what do you just think of this general concept?
Okay, so the general concept, I think it's great. It's going to make money. It's more of like a fan aspect than necessarily, a player's like a big game. I mean, it's still an honor to, I guess, make this all-star team, this hypothetical all-star team. but I feel like it would be more of a fan thing. There's like just so many factors because all of our American sports do have this like all-star kind of setup with, football, the Pro Bowl, MLS has their all-star team, NBA, and they all kind of work a little differently. And they're all like different in competitive nature. So I think if the Premier League wants to get this really right, they're going to need to pick like a specific time in the season where it can be competitive and not just like, those charity games and like have incentives. Like this year, the NBA was like the first good all-star game in a while because I think they paid $250,000 to each player on the winning team. So it kind of incentivized, like they're going to have incentives to get these players to really try, and that even makes it better for the fans. So like this year's all-star game was incredible. And I think if the Premier League could implement some sort of, I don't know if North versus South, or because there's not like conferences in the Premier League like there is in American sports. So they're going to have to figure out like a fair way to divide, the teams. But I don't see why this wouldn't work. But they have to get it right.
Okay, fair enough. Christian, your thoughts?
I'm really not a big proponent in this at all. I think that in American sports, the All-Star game is pointless. I feel like players aren't playing to their top level, and there's no point to the game. You get nothing out of it. I think one of the games you might, is it the MLB?
Yeah, baseball used to be the World Series home field advantage was. Are they still doing that, Matt? Do you know?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, yeah, but there's no real benefit I can see from the Premier League doing it that way. North versus South will end up just being Chelsea, Arsenal, and Spurs versus Liverpool, United, and City. That's what it's going to be every year. Yeah, that sounds good on paper, and people are going to want to watch that, but players aren't going to be playing at their top level. There's no way in the season, with the way the season's set up right now, there's no time they could fit that in. It would have to be during the summer when no one's going to be playing at their top level. And really, I don't know how they're going to fit it into the schedule. And it just seems like a marketing ploy more than it would be any other factor.
Fair enough. Mark, your thoughts on this Premier League All-Star game?
I don't think there's any way at all this happens. There's no way the Premier League clubs are going to risk their assets getting injured and being out for the rest of the season. I know traditionally in the American All-Star games, there's very little defence played, or defence, sorry. So it might be interesting to see that in the Premier League, people showboating, doing things they can't normally do in games. But ultimately, I think that from a cultural perspective, All-Star games are an American thing. And if the world all becomes the same and starts doing the same thing, then it's going to become a little more dull.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for me, I just don't think it's necessary. And nowadays, I mean, most of the times, Matt, you were alluding to this, that even American fans are like, the Pro Bowl, the NFL All-Star game, like nobody really watches. And from a competitive perspective, it's just,
it's a two-hand touch game now. So it's not even worth
I didn't
watching.
even know that.
No,
did not even know that.
Is it flag or is it two-hand touch?
Well, whatever it is.
I think it was flagged this year.
Yeah, it's awful.
Well,
it's terrible to watch.
I didn't know that. But yeah, so I don't know why the Premier League even would need it. I mean, it seems kind of fun, and it is generally for the fans, right? So it's a spectacle for fans to kind of all come together. If they had I think rather than a game, I would be kind of interested in whether, the NBA does like a skills competition. And if, if they did how FIFA is and EA is getting players together and doing those like skill games, like FIFA in real life.
Yeah.
If they did something more along those lines rather than a full all out game, or like a futsal tournament, something like maybe more small scale, and it was 3-on-3 or 5-on-5, and then over the course of multiple rounds, so you could get I don't know, 25 players in there or something like that. I don't know, I'm just spitballing.
Futsal tournament.
Do a fan futsal tournament. Yeah, but having something more along those lines rather than like a full game, because Mark, you're spot on. Nobody is going to want to risk getting injured, and if you're not going to play to your full ability, I mean, sometimes you're even at more risk for being injured. So I just don't see any way that it happens. And then logistically, I just don't know where the heck this would even fit in the schedule.
Yeah, the only thing I could possibly see All-Star wise is them taking a team in the summer to play the MLS All-Stars. Like I could see that happening, but even that, I don't really want to see that. I think the MLS All-Stars should be playing against each other, East and West. I think it's stupid the way that it's set up right now.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to highlight is like these guys are competitors, right? They're on opposing teams, and yeah, the world is becoming smaller, and it's all globalized, and everybody's kind of friends. But at the end of the day, during the season, like, City's
These
way out in the
players
front.
don't like each
Well,
other.
exactly.
You
Like
can tell.
United and Liverpool, like trying to be on the same team. Like I can't even
look what happened to
that.
the English national team.
Yeah.
Every single tournament, they don't like each other, and it causes problems in the dressing room, and that shows on the field.
Matt, anything else you want to add here?
Oh yeah, well, MLB did get rid of that thing like 2 years ago.
Okay.
So it does mean nothing now. But what you were saying, like we're alluding to, like an all-star weekend, like the NBA has, like not necessarily an all-star game, but skills challenges. I feel like that's something that could work. I know like the NFL even tried that, where they did like dodgeball games and just like made it fun. We made it like fun for the players, and like it's a way of honoring them. I mean, they already get honored with like the PFA, like Team of the Year, stuff like that. So I think that's basically what the all-star meaning is for the players right now. But I don't know if there was a way for them to like do something together and also make money and engage the fans, like what you were saying. I think that would be a good idea.
Like the PFA right now is more for the players, but I think like the whole All-Star weekend sort of concept is more to celebrate the fans. So if they could somehow incorporate that. Mark, anything else you want to add here?
Yeah, I like the idea of a fun skills competition, something like that, just to see what else these players can do. One other point, though, is there has been a 39th game talked about for a number of years. So this would be a one-off game at the end of every season. It's a competitive game. I don't know how they would work out who plays who, but it would be played away from England, and it would take competitive English football globally and get more fans engaged worldwide. So maybe this could be something that is a solution to that as well.
Yeah, because I know FIFA is very anti that, because FIFA has specific statutes that you can't play competitive matches outside of your jurisdiction. And so maybe this is a way to sort of get around it, because the Premier League definitely wants to go global with their branding and everything like that. And if you had, a celebration outside of England, because Mark, you were alluding to it earlier, I don't even know how much cultural significance this would even have within England. But if you brought something like this to China or to America and celebrated it here, I think, it might be a home run for the league and for its fans.
Yeah.
So
Especially international fans, I think, would jump on board with that.
Absolutely. So last topic we wanted to talk about in this first section is sticking in England, but they look to be adding a winter break for the Premier League. So this would start in the 2019-2020 season and would be the first 2 weeks of February. So a little bit later than a lot of other European leagues. It would only apply to the Premier League. It wouldn't apply to lower divisions throughout England. It also would mean no more FA Cup replays. So for those who don't know, right now, if the first match in an FA Cup matchup is tied at the end of the match, there's a replay at the other team's home ground. So the FA Cup replays would be done away at that point. And the whole motivation for this seems to be helping England do better in the 2020 Euros. So Christian, wanted to get your thoughts here first on just this concept of the break, the timing of it, the motivation. What are your thoughts here?
I think it's a very good idea to add a winter break. I don't know how I feel about them adding it in February. I think they should add it when everyone else has it. Although I understand from the FA's perspective, that's when most of their viewers are watching in that holiday period, because they're the only ones playing, and that's why they don't want to get rid of it. It's been historically a tradition for England to show their games during the holiday stretch, and I just think it makes more sense to give the break then. I think people should be with their families. This players should be with their families around that time of the year. And it would go a long way. I don't think that playing it in February changes anything for the summer tournaments for international, which is their main goal for helping the team. They're helping England more than they're helping their Premier League clubs. But at the end of the day, if they put it in February, I think those first 2 rounds in the Champions League are going to benefit massively, even though that isn't their main goal.
The first knockout rounds?
The first knockout rounds, yeah, in the round of 16. Their teams would have so much rest going into that first round there in the first leg that they would have a huge advantage. So there is no problem with me for that one. My biggest problem is the FA Cup replays. The lower level teams need those replays financially. They go such a long way. Even in the article, it's discussing, I can't remember. Do you know what team it was that they're discussing in the article?
So no, but I know Rochdale just did it with Tottenham. Tottenham ended up prevailing, but I know Rochdale just earned, it was something like a couple £100,000, right? Right, Mark?
Yeah, it would have been a lot of money, and there's clubs that have stayed in existence because of the money they've earned from big games like in the FA Cup.
Yeah. It's Exeter City. When
Exeter
they played Liverpool in 2016, they earned a replay. They said that replay has paid for all of their youth artificial turf fields that they can use. Can you all hear that beeping? It's real annoying.
Apologies. Yeah, that is laundry is done. Life happens.
Yeah, so the Exeter City, they got all of that cash in, and they were able to use it they said, use over the next 10 years to help their club. That goes such a long way. And if you take that away in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds of the FA Cup, teams are really going to struggle, and you could see teams falling off the face of the earth.
So they need to figure out some way to compensate them. Mark, wanted to get your thoughts here on this whole break idea.
Well, I don't think the lack of a winter break is the reason England are poor at international level. We have players from all countries in the world playing in the Premier League, and the lack of a winter break doesn't seem to hurt them when they come to play for their country. Another thing is when other countries are having their winter break, we're actually almost doubling the schedule. So there's twice as many games. But having said that, we can't get rid of the holiday fixtures, because that is something that is probably the highlight of the calendar in English football. And on the FA Cup, it's obviously the financial point from the smaller clubs, but the Cup's losing its significance already. For the big teams, it's not important. And the only significance it has now is these smaller teams and their fairy tale cup runs. So if you take away the replays, you're going to diminish the Cup even more.
Yeah, really good points there. Matt, your thoughts on this break?
Yeah, I agree with you guys with how bad it would be for the FA Cup. I like what Christian said about the Champions League. I didn't even think about how well that could impact the English clubs in the Champions League, and I guess push England further in those tournaments, especially with how poor they've been over the last couple of years by their standards. They haven't been poor, but by their standards, the last couple of years have been pretty bad. And I thought the article had a good idea of changing the allocation of money between the winners and losers of each round. So right now, you get the same amount for both teams, get the same amount for each round they get to. So I think it would even incentivize the smaller clubs to push even harder to get those wins to keep going each round.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They need to figure out some way to compensate these lower level teams, because although this is probably beneficial at the highest levels of competition, I mean, the FA is responsible for soccer development throughout England, right? They can't just be catering to only the top few clubs. And so they need to figure out some sort of way that that benefits all of the teams. And so whether that's a redistribution of the prize money, whether that is figuring out additional ways to monetize the FA Cup, because, right now, I think winning the FA Cup is you get less prize money than moving one place in the Premier League table. I believe that may be right. If not, it may be 2 places in the Premier League table. So I think winning the FA Cup is somewhere between £1 to £2 million, and moving a place in the Premier League table is right around that same amount. So right now, the highest level teams just don't have that incentive, but these lower level teams, you're talking about a couple £100,000, which is a rounding error on a Premier League balance sheet. For a lower level team, this is a huge deal. And so the FA needs to figure out some way to compensate them. Having said all that, at the end of the day, I think a break is just good for players. I think it's important to give them a break just throughout the season, minimize injuries and everything like that. I agree with you guys. I don't necessarily believe that having this break will all of a sudden make England more competitive at the Euros or something like that. England's issues may be a little bit more deep rooted at playing youth and integrating them into the team and all of that, rather than just they just play too much. But having said all that, I think the break is a good idea. I think the timing's off, but with the way the schedule works, I mean, I think this might be the best time, or it might be the only time that it works. I mean, Italy this year did something different where they shifted their break back from, they played throughout the holiday period, and then they took a break, I think the first couple of weeks in January. So I don't know why something like that might not be able to work in England, but maybe that's kind of when the FA Cup is traditionally played. And so, maybe that's why. So, anything else you want to add, Christian?
I just am focusing mainly on the Champions League from the. I think they would benefit. English clubs will benefit way more in the Champions League than their national team will at the end of the season. I think that is a huge bonus for them if they do follow through with this.
Okay, fair enough. Mark, anything else you want to add?
No, I just hope my team's in the Champions League to benefit.
There you go. Matt, anything else you want to add?
Nope.
Okay, cool. With that, that brings us to the end of our first segment. You're going to hear a little bit of music, and we will all be back with you right after this. Talk to you soon. All right, cool. That was good stuff. I will, so then here, this will all get edited out. Next topics, NASL canceling the 2018 season, FC Dallas, and then Pulisic's agent. Yeah, everybody good to keep rolling? Any questions, anything like that?
I think we're ready.
Cool. We're running a little long, so I may try to speed it up a little bit. Okay. Welcome back, everyone, to our second segment. So we touched on this last week, but the NASL, which is one of the lower divisions in American soccer, recently came out and didn't win its legal challenge to remain a Division II league. So they are officially a Division III league in America. That means that they can't be financially viable in their eyes. So they have canceled the 2018 season and look to be likely folding. So Mark, I wanted to start with you. I don't know your familiarity with NASL. So if you have thoughts on specifically NASL and their struggles, or just general thoughts on sort of lower division soccer in the US, just how we don't have promotion and relegation, how we have these competing leagues and we have 2 Division II leagues, just maybe some of your general thoughts on kind of what's going on with lower level soccer in America from your perspective.
Well, from an outsider's point of view, it looks like the 2 leagues you had at the second tier level, the USL was certainly the most exciting looking. You've got more clubs. You've got clubs doing some very interesting things. Clubs like, is it Las Vegas Lights? They're getting a lot of press at the moment. Cincinnati are doing some good things. And even at the lower levels, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Detroit City FC, but some of their fan culture there and stuff like that is absolutely incredible. Not a fan of there being no relegation, because that means some teams are quarter way through the season and they've just lost interest. But having said that, would you lose that culture of the smaller clubs if they were promoted?
Yeah, interesting stuff. So, Christian, your thoughts on NASL?
Sorry, I was completely distracted there, looking at the wrong topic. NASL canceling its season. At the end of the day, does anyone really care that much? Is the problem. They don't have a huge fan base following them, and I know that they're professional teams that need to be repeatedly playing, and they need to be competing and forcing themselves to improve their level, because that's only going to help US soccer if we have increased level on the lower tier teams. But right now, I don't think it's that big of a deal. A lot of the teams are following into the USL, right?
Yeah.
Or into the NPSL.
Yeah, NPSL, which is where Detroit City plays.
Yeah, exactly. So there are teams flowing into other leagues right now just to stay competitive, and they're willing to come back to the NASL if things get put back together in the league.
Not the USL ones.
They're not?
No, the USL ones have moved, but the NPSL ones, yes, are.
Okay. Well, there's been a lot of issues with the NASL, so I could see this being permanent. I don't know if it will be, but they're losing a lot of their teams because of the way that the league has been run over the past couple of years. And we've discussed them multiple times with their forcing of relegation and promotion. But I think that would benefit. We've discussed it. I'm not going to go into it in the long run, but I think promotion and relegation is huge for US soccer, and it would go a long way in improving the overall quality. But the NASL is canceled its season. Hopefully it comes back, but in the long run, I don't know if that's a huge loss for soccer if they do, because they can form another league spinoff, or they could join together with the USL.
Okay. So, Matt, I want to get your thoughts here.
Yeah, I think it's sad. I mean, that's about all I can say about it. I mean, it's not like it was frustrating having 2 second division teams. Like, it never made sense in my mind. Like, how are there 2 like at the same level, but like not really.
Like same, but different.
Yeah, same, but different. Yeah, but yeah, it was just like one of the most frustrating things about American soccer, especially because we don't do that with any sports. Like, it makes sense if like it was an American culture, but like our other sports, like we have for baseball, single A, double A, triple A with our lower division, and then we have like G League for basketball and things like that, and it just like never made sense. And like minor league hockey, it never made sense for me that why we had 2 at the same level that weren't really integrated with each other. I think it's beneficial, like for the long run of like just like the setup of the leagues having one league that's going to feed into the MLS. But I mean, it's just overall, I guess it's just sad seeing the league kind of fold in America, especially where we need to be growing.
Absolutely. So, Matt, you touched on a lot of great points there. So, and everybody did, but specifically, so it's sad when players, fans, and executives or front office staff lose their jobs because the fans don't lose their jobs, but the players and front office are losing their jobs. So anybody losing their jobs is not a great thing. It's sad for the fans because they're not going to have pro soccer in their town or in their area for a lot of these teams. And so when that's missing, I mean, you may be missing kids being incentivized to play the game or to become bigger fans. And so there's nothing quite like experiencing a match in person versus watching on television and everything like that. So you're missing out on that. But it does provide a little bit of clarity for lower division soccer in the US. And if this is a step along the way to getting some sort of integrated pyramid or something like that, it might be the best thing. I mean, I love that the NASL was completely independent and really just wanted to develop the best players and its best clubs. The USL has this sort of hybrid model where they're affiliated with MLS and they have reserve teams, and some of the organizations in the USL have no incentive to win matches. They're just incentivized to develop players. And so having that as your Division II league is a little bit odd. So there's a struggle from that perspective, whereas NASL was just solely trying to make the best players and make the product competitive. But at the end of the day, I think it does help provide a little bit of clarity on everything. Mark, anything else you want to add?
No, nothing.
Okay, cool. Christian?
Yeah, just with what you were saying, it doesn't incentivize them. With the Open Cup, you see a lot of those teams in the USL or the NASL, when they're competing in the Open Cup against the MLS teams, they never really seem that competitive. And that kind of takes away from the spectacle of it, because a lot of the teams play against what is considered almost their reserve teams. Like when we played the Harrisburg City Islanders, they're not really a team that we're going to be competing with. We draw from their talent pool most of the time. So there was no real incentive in those games. And I think this might create more of a pyramid where it is competitive in the cup.
Why? Because USL, they're still affiliated, right? USL still has.
But in the long run, I think those clubs are going to become independent, because now if we do become more of a pyramid structure and it's more structured, teams are going to be independent in different levels, and I don't think they're going to all have affiliations. Okay. So it could create a more competitive atmosphere, especially for cup.
Okay, potentially, yeah. Matt, anything else you want to
add? Nope.
Okay, let's talk about FC Dallas. So sticking in American soccer, but moving up a level to MLS. FC Dallas recently played in the CONCACAF Champions League, obviously the Champions League equivalent of the UEFA Champions League, which most of us are more familiar with. In the first round, they played Toro FC. First round, meaning the round of 16. That's how CONCACAF Champions League works. Over 2 legs, FC Dallas, one of the kind of best franchises in MLS. They're not, at the very, very top, but they're a very competitive squad. They lost to the 8th placed Panamanian team in the 10-team league. 8 out of 10. It was 3-3 over 2 legs, but Toro FC advanced on away goals. Christian, your thoughts here on if this is bad for MLS as a whole? Is this just bad for FC Dallas? What are your thoughts there from that perspective?
Oh, it's bad for Dallas, but it's not good for the league. Okay. I think that it really puts a damper on some of the progress MLS has been making. If you're going to lose to a lower level Panamanian squad, who, no offense to them, they're just not a world talent that you would think of, and you have to be winning games against the Central American teams. That's just how I feel. They don't have as big of a talent pool to pull from. Their league isn't regarded as highly in the world market. And for a team like Dallas, who have been producing youth, who have been competitive, make the playoffs almost every single year, even though they've kind of gone downhill this year, still they have to be winning those games and just helping the league's overall stature in the world soccer market.
Matt, your thoughts here on Dallas losing?
Yeah, I don't think it is that big of a deal for the MLS. I mean, I think it's more Dallas to blame. I think other teams are going to bounce back. I think like Seattle could still do well. And as long as a couple teams are doing well, I think it's better for the league. I mean, Arsenal just lost to Ooster, whatever, in the Europa League at home.
Oostersund.
Yeah. Yeah, they lost to them at home in the Europa League. They still advanced, but it's like it's just like tough playing against some of these teams sometimes, and the conditions and the environment you play in, especially in like Central America. Like the U.S. national team struggles there. It's just like a hostile environment, the field conditions, everything. It's just not necessarily like soccer where what professionals are used to in American or overseas. Like they wouldn't be used to that kind of environment. So I'm not blaming necessarily like the league that much, but it's pretty much just on Dallas. It's Dallas's fault.
Okay, Mark, do you have thoughts on either FC Dallas's specific situation or maybe from like a Premier League perspective? If a Premier League team goes out to maybe a lower rated team in Europe, like is that reflected back on the Premier League? Is that just more, fixated on that specific team? I don't know if you have specific thoughts there.
I think it's different over here in England because you guys, I think, are US soccer fans first and club fans second. Here in England, we're club fans first, English football fans second. So we've got our rivalries, and the club that goes out would be outraged. The other clubs would just be laughing at them. So it is kind of different. I think where the same thing is on the national level, when England get embarrassed, such as going out the Euros to Iceland, then there is national outrage. The press pick up on it. In terms of Dallas, I don't think it's a big deal. It's bad for their season. Obviously, they'd like to progress, but in the grand scheme of things, this is one game. Upsets happen all the time. In the Europa League, in the Champions League, FA Cup, the stronger teams do bounce back. The stronger leagues bounce back. The US is obviously the dominant force in the region, and it will continue to be so.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I side more with them over. I don't think it's really that bad of a reflection on MLS. I think it's more of a reflection on just how poorly things are going for FC Dallas. They basically fell off a cliff the middle of last season and just haven't recovered. They're having injuries. They're just really, really struggling. So I think it's more of a reflection on how poorly FC Dallas is kind of doing rather than, the league really doing poorly.
Well, losing a team in this competition just allows Mexico to continue to dominate. They're going to have more teams in the next round, and Mexico just keeps winning this competition. The US has never won it, and it's hurting us to have never won the Champions League here.
Absolutely. And that comes more from we can start going down this rabbit hole, but that comes more from a roster construction perspective in MLS. And things are improving and they're incremental. And I think it's right around the corner before that. I also
think one of the biggest detriments is the scheduling of when the Champions League is. This isn't the Dallas team that made it to the Champions League. This is a completely different squad because of the length of time between when one season ends and you actually enter the Champions League.
Yeah, and just to build on top of that, this is even a more unique situation because the Champions League was recently reorganized, and so this FC Dallas team that qualified for this is actually from 2 seasons ago. So it's not even from last season because the Champions League was recently restructured and there's no more group stage and it's just straight to knockouts. So yeah, this FC Dallas team almost had no business being there. Same with the Colorado team that was knocked out. They almost had no business being there. But on top of that, not just from a timing perspective on, the season difference, it's also MLS is preseason. Like the MLS season just started and FC Dallas had to play 2 Champions League matches before the season even really started. I mean, but that happens overseas too with knockout round, your qualifying round, Europa League or Champions League matches. So,
it's not an excuse to lose in this game.
Absolutely. Well, I guess not.
Yeah.
Matt, anything else you want to add?
I still think it's an excuse. Maybe not a good one, but it's an excuse.
Yeah. Mark, anything else you want to add?
I think if you play that fixture 10 times, Dallas wins 9 of them. Just upsets happen.
Absolutely. Last thing we wanted to talk about in this section, jumping over to the American kind of game, and Rob Moore, who is the agent for Christian Pulisic and not McKennie, but sorry, I can't remember the other players who's on his roster. I think Tatigui and Wright, maybe Haji Wright on Schalke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he is the agent for those players. He has come out and said the best U.S. youth players need to go to Europe as early as possible. And one of the biggest reasons for that is obviously the just culture and development over in Europe is more competitive and produces better players. But on top of that, he stresses that the fact that American clubs or European clubs don't have to pay American clubs training compensation or solidarity payments, which are basically compensation for helping develop youth players, overseas. if a player's in Tottenham's youth system and Arsenal all of a sudden signs him, well, let's not use Arsenal. Liverpool all of a sudden signs him. Liverpool has to pay Tottenham a fee for helping develop that player. That doesn't happen over here. So all the time, Weston McKennie was in FC Dallas's youth system for 9 years. He left and went to Schalke. Dallas loses all of their investment in that player. That's how it works over here. And so Moore is very, focused on keeping that system because it allows American players to move overseas. And his argument is if training compensation and solidarity payments had to be enforced, American players wouldn't move overseas. Christian, your thoughts on the training compensation and solidarity payments, playing a role in this? Do American youth players have to move overseas as early as possible? What are your thoughts on just some of Moore's thoughts here?
As of now, yes, we don't have the correct system right now to help produce the top players. And as he says in the article, we should be producing multiple players like Pulisic every year with the amount of people we have in this country to pull from. It's absurd that we can't create talented soccer players. But if you send them to Europe at 16 years old, that is a huge advantage for a lot of clubs over in Europe because they don't have to pay the compensation that you would have to pay from players in Europe. They don't. I think that's ridiculous and it's not helping our clubs. I think we do need a system where we're getting that money in to invest in producing 5 to 10 more of that player. And eventually that will help produce players in the US and our training system will improve because those payments will get reinvested in the infrastructure of the entire organization. Yeah. So in the long run, that's what has to happen. But as of now, I think it is for the best of the players to be sent over to Europe. He mentions Tyler Booth. Is that his name? Taylor Booth. Yeah. He's another 18-year-old who's getting sent over to Bayern Munich. And that's a huge team with an incredible system that they could produce incredible talent out of. So having another player over in the Bundesliga, which seems to be our best bet to send players to right now, is a huge advantage for the US, and they're not having to pay for it. It's almost like a win-win for both the US player and for the clubs over in Europe.
Yeah, it's a win for the specific player. It may not be a win for U.S. soccer. Yeah. Matt, your thoughts here on just this, sending players over to Europe as early as possible and training compensation and solidarity payments?
I don't necessarily say as early as possible. I think it's important to, develop around like other American soccer players at least a certain age. Like Pulisic was here until what, he was 14?
16.
16? Oh, yeah. And like I remember watching him in like the U14, U16 like national camps. When he was playing, and like you could tell then like he was better than everybody else. So it's not like necessarily Dortmund definitely helped him make the next jump into where he is right now, but it's not like Dortmund made him exactly who he is. I think he still developed in America. I think his agent is also saying this because he probably makes more money when his players go to Europe. So I think that's his incentive. But for like the American incentive, like we need players here to develop our league. We need these great players. The thing is like, we kind of suck at integrating those young players. So I think if the MLS can figure out a way to get these young players, regular minutes in the MLS, in the CONCACAF Champions League, in like all these tournaments, I think they should be staying here. But as of right now, like that's not happening. So for that development, they need to go to, the Ajax, the Dutch league, the German league, where they actually do play the youth players.
Good points. Mark, your thoughts here on either, U.S. youth development or maybe from a Premier League perspective?
I don't think there's one size that fits all here. Some players are going to benefit from going to Europe. Other, essentially, kids aren't going to benefit from being so far away from home. I think got to remember that the US is a very young soccer nation compared to some of the other countries out there. And although you have excellent people with excellent knowledge, it takes time to add those extra 1%, 0.5% that really make the difference. So, yes, sure, send some to Europe from the experience, but others will benefit from being in the States, and it will benefit the coaches and it will benefit the system to improve it. In terms of England, I think our player development is not great at the moment. There isn't a necessity to do it with all the money in the Premier League. Why spend money developing someone when you can just go and buy the finished article? Coaches like the top teams can't risk developing youth because they'll be out of a job within a year if they do. So I think both countries have problems, but maybe different ones.
Yeah, you're spot on. I think for me, it's always a one size doesn't fit all. And this is what I've hammered home in the past. Landon Donovan was somebody who went overseas and just wasn't developing as a player. And he was just better at developing when he was more comfortable in his environment. Pulisic, somebody who likes to be challenged and will grow and will respond to those challenges. So it worked for him. I think having a combination, and it's critical to keep developing the U.S. infrastructure. And for me, that needs to include training compensation and solidarity payments. That's the only way. MLS clubs are doing a better job of developing players. We just watched the Union match yesterday. They were starting at least 2 teenagers, and then they played another homegrown in their system. So, Tyler Adams is getting minutes. FC Dallas started an outside back who was a teenager. So it's slowly happening in MLS. The issue is we have 23 MLS franchises. NASL just folded. USL is in maybe 30 markets, if even that, because, there might be some overlap with MLS markets. So at the end of the day, the vast majority of clubs that are training players have to pay. Players have to pay to be in those systems. And if you had training compensation and solidarity payments, it helps offset the cost to those players. It incentivizes clubs to produce better players. And all of that, sort of building would help, develop the American infrastructure. Having said all that, yeah, it still is important to send maybe some of the best players over to Europe, because that is where the best soccer is being played. There's no doubt about that. But it's all sort of, you need to have as many avenues as possible for players to go down, because it's not a one size fits all. So that's sort of my perspective. Any other thoughts, Christian?
Yeah, I just think the quickest way as of this moment right now for a player to develop at 16 to 18 years old is to go to Europe. And in the article, he says the 0.1% that Moore wants to work with, Europe is the only option. I don't agree that it's the only option, as we've discussed here, but I think it is the quickest option as of right now. Yes, people can be uncomfortable outside of their natural surroundings. Yeah, if you go abroad, you might not get along with the culture over there. You just don't know. But right now, our production line isn't good enough. We don't give our youth enough of a chance. We're starting to see a very, very small percentage of that happening, like especially with what we were talking about with the Union. But not enough teams are doing that. And to really get your chance, Europe is the best option right now.
Fair enough. Matt, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I just think, like what you guys are saying, like each player is different, and there's no like one clear answer.
Matt or Mark, sorry, anything else you want to add in closing?
I think you just got to be very careful just not to be totally reliant on Europe. Otherwise, it will stunt the growth of the domestic game, and the MLS will have trouble growing.
Well said. Well said. With that, that brings us to the end of our second segment. You're going to hear a little bit more music, and we will be back with our third segment.
That was very long.
That was long. It's all right. This one's going to be a long one, but that's okay. All right. Well, I mean, it wasn't very long. Our first segment was about the same amount of time. So it's just going to be longer.
Cut the VAR if you like.
Well, I mean, that'll be a pretty quick topic for you, because we've already given our thoughts. So I'll just go to you real quick, just for some of your thoughts, because I mean, it's impacted kind of your team that you've been supporting, right? So were you at the match in person?
I wasn't. No, I held out.
Okay, no worries. But I'd like to, maybe just get your thoughts, and whatever. This might be a bit longer. It's fine.
I'm fine with it.
Okay, Matt, you good to keep going? Matt?
All right, sorry, you lagged there. I didn't hear you say my name. Okay. I'm ready.
So,
okay.
Okay.
I guess he's ready.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone, to our third and final segment. Before we get into the topics, we've talked about VAR a little bit on recent podcasts, and I know, Mark and I have exchanged messages about it. So I wanted to give him, a little bit of an opportunity to just give some of his thoughts on video assistant referee. So, Mark, what are your thoughts on VAR and its implementations in the UK?
Well, so far in England, obviously, it's only been used in the FA Cup, and it's probably been nothing short of a disaster. It's not been very well thought out. It's not been executed very well. Two of the biggest problems are that the fans in the ground don't know what's going on. You just see the referee stand there with his hand to his ear. And also, when a goal goes in, you don't know if to be excited or not anymore, because you're going to have to wait for that. Just a couple of points I wanted to bring up. I think it's here to stay, unfortunately. And so I think we've got to look to other sports. Now in rugby, you can hear what the referee says. on TV. And if you're in the stand, you can hire or buy a headset. So that then means everybody knows what's going on. And I think rugby fans have learned to delay their celebrations because they know. So I think it will take some getting used to in football, but I can see it going that way, or soccer, sorry. The other thing is in cricket, they also use it. And they built some tension there by giving out the result on the scoreboard. So there'll be a delay and there'll be like a drum roll, and then the scoreboard will either say out or not out. So that could be a way of building some of the excitement back into it that's lost from the delay.
Those are interesting. Yeah, those are interesting thoughts. I mean, with cricket, it's a little bit more black and white, right? Whereas soccer is sometimes a little bit more gray, but rugby has a lot of similarities to soccer. The two sports kind of evolved from the same sport. Shout out Soccer Tavern video if you want to go learn more about that. But Mark, I wanted to give you, so I know you had a couple questions that you wanted to ask us, Christian, maybe.
Sorry, I had a point that I was actually watching the England versus Scotland rugby match last week, which was really interesting to watch. But actually hearing what the referee was saying the whole game was really, really cool. He had a camera on his body too, so you got his perspective. I think it's a really unique idea, but in soccer, I can't imagine that would work because of all the yelling that happens between the players and the referee. You don't see any rugby players complaining or yelling at the ref, which is really, really cool to see.
Yeah, what is the saying? It's rugby is a hooligan's game played by gentlemen, and soccer is a gentleman's game played by hooligans. So yeah, it's kind of, and it dates back to how just the players kind of behave. And at the end of the day, soccer culture has let that happen. Yeah. So, I mean, if they could somehow start to crack down on that, I mean, I think it might be more interesting and cool to see from a rugby perspective. But I know we're running, or from a soccer perspective, I know we're running a little bit long, but Mark, wanted to give you the opportunity. I know you had a couple questions you wanted to ask us, so I wanted to turn it over to you now.
Yeah, okay, thanks. So I know you guys have traveled around Europe and you've been to some games, and I just wanted to get your opinion on what's the difference between watching soccer in Europe to in the States.
Yeah, sure. I know I definitely have some thoughts. Matt, do you want to give your thoughts first?
Yeah, so I feel like in America, the actual fact of just going to the game is like the best part of the experience, and just being there with your friends. Whereas when we were in England watching the Premier League, everyone is so engaged in the actual game. It's so much different than here. Whereas you come here and a lot of people are just there to just drink and hang out with their friends at a lot of our games. But there's also a lot of stoppages in our sports, like the NFL and basketball. Soccer, we just don't have the culture to really care enough for our fans to be as passionate, as a whole, the whole stadium to be as passionate as it is over there. But I would say those are the differences, just the overall attentiveness of the fans.
It's good. Christian, thoughts?
Yeah, to go off of that, I agree with you, Matt. I think that when we went to the Crystal Palace game, the guy told us you can't have your phone out during the game and taking pictures, which was brand new to us. We had never heard of anything like that before. And I kind of like that was what he told us. I don't know if that's actually a rule. Is that actually a rule? No, he's shaking his head no. I could tell that was not real. But yeah, he was telling us that, which would, I mean, I like that he told us that because it kind of makes you more attentive to not have your phone out. And Matt is completely right. People go for the spectacle. People won't go to games by themselves. They want to be with people they know because I truly don't think people care as much about the sport as they do about the atmosphere at the game, which in Europe was way off the charts compared to the US. I've been to every single sporting game or sporting team, I guess, in Philadelphia. And I went to the Berlin game. I went to Crystal Palace. I went to Man City. The fans in Europe are insane. They are so much more passionate, and it's really just feels so much better. You get the atmosphere, even though you're there for the game. When in the US, you get to watch a game, but you're there for the atmosphere.
Yeah, so I will say, so again, this is all generally speaking, because obviously you do have pockets of American fans that do kind of behave that way. The couple of things that I noticed is that European soccer is very similar to college football in this country, where college football definitely has a little bit more of that same sort of tribal atmosphere that doesn't necessarily happen maybe at the pro level. So I think that there's some kind of comparison there. I will say also, maybe I went in with the most absurdly high expectations because I wasn't like, I expected the entire stadium to be standing and to be singing and chanting the entire time. It was, generally speaking, similar to American kind of stadiums in the sense of, at midfield on either side, you had kind of the more, I don't know, well-behaved fans, or the fans that were there maybe to watch and they clapped and they maybe got involved in a couple chants, but then you had the real kind of loud supporters in the away section and then maybe behind each net. So yeah. I will say there were some similarities there. Obviously, it's at a bigger scale in Europe. Even at the Palace match, there was probably, 10,000, well, probably closer to 5,000, crazy fans. Whereas, the Sons of Ben maybe is 2,000, which is the Philadelphia team. The last thing is, culturally speaking, I think the American culture is one that drives. And over in Europe and Germany, which is where I've been to matches, everybody takes public transport. And the actual getting to the match, you're with tons of other fans, and there's almost like just a natural march. It's not like in America you have to organize a march if you want to march into the stadium with fans. And like, we just naturally were walking to the game with what felt like thousands of Crystal Palace fans. And so it was definitely like a different perspective, from that sort of angle when you're attending in person. It's more just communal, both in the commute, in the pub kind of culture and all of that. Whereas, in America, some people get to the stadium 4 hours early and tailgate. Some get to the stadium 1 hour early, and so I think that is kind of
that was what I was just about to bring up, the tailgating. I don't think that is such a big factor in Europe, at least from what we saw. Most people in the US get to games multiple hours early and just start drinking and grilling out and just hanging out outside, almost like a party effect.
Yeah, it's an experience, like Matt was talking about.
And I feel like in Europe, people just go to the game. That's a big difference. I don't know if that's true. Do you agree?
I think in Europe people go to the pub beforehand.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a similar thing in a different place.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, so that was kind of our thoughts on that topic. I know you had, I think, one more question, or
yeah. So our stadium's seen TV partners, the Lad Americans Discussing Soccer, had a negative review last week from a British listener that didn't like the way they spoke about soccer in an Americanized way and criticized them for not talking about the EPL in a way consistent with what British people do. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that and the culture of the EPL specifically in the States.
Do you have thoughts? Or you want me to go first?
You go first.
Okay. So, I mean, I think it's just different. So when you're there in person attending matches and being in the same media sort of environment and everybody's kind of it's almost like a group think, right? So everything you're kind of hearing is from just, kind of all the same, right? When you're in Europe. Over in America, we have, number one, we can watch so many different versions of soccer from a league perspective, from a commentary perspective. You can watch it in a native language. You can watch it in, British. You can watch it with American commentators. And so you get that. And then additionally, you have all these different media sources, whether it's Twitter, you can get information, you can get it from Facebook, you can get it from, articles online, and we don't really get it in our newspapers. So everybody kind of gets their sources of information in different ways and watches the matches in different ways. And then, some people like attending, going to bars and watching matches with groups. Others like watching it by themselves. And so I think you just have a much more fractured sort of way of consuming soccer and consuming the Premier League and all of that. And so what goes along with that is you're going to get people that say things differently, or that think differently, or that, or that see things differently. And so naturally it's going to be different than what somebody is seeing, and experiencing kind of in person, along with other people that are kind of in a similar situation. That's kind of my thoughts. Do you want to go, or Matt?
Matt, go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Like what Dave was saying, it's kind of just like with the fracturedness of like how to watch soccer in this country. Whereas like our other sports, you watch like from one network and you watch like the same analytics. Everyone has like pretty similar ideas and you can like watch with your friends. It's kind of upsetting to me that like I can't really watch soccer in like big groups with my friends. It's either like they don't care enough or like everyone's like watching in a different place. Whereas like you watching a basketball game or like a football game with like all your friends, and it's like a big thing. Like watching games, like a party with your friends, watching games, like a very common thing here. Whereas like watching like soccer isn't like a thing, and you have all these different leagues, all these different, like all these different soccer leagues, all these different, ways to watch it that people care about in America. And I think it's just weird that we don't have like a set culture.
All right. I actually really love the fact that it's a little bit fractured and everyone thinks a little bit different. I think it adds an element that a lot of other places don't get. We have so many different avenues that you can go down in terms of liking, I don't know, the Premier League, liking the Bundesliga, liking La Liga, liking MLS. There's so many different like factions that you can go into, and we get different media from all the different outlets, as Dave was saying. It's almost up to you and how you were raised and how you followed the game when you were young, that you develop those kind of, I don't know, qualities and what you like about the game and which avenue you're going to take. Because we have people who support the MLS. We have people who support the Mexican League, like mostly I'd say in the South. A lot of people watch the Mexican League. And then is a huge group of people who watch the European leagues. And it just, you don't really have a camaraderie between what people think in the game. And I think that has hurt the MLS and US soccer development a little bit because it's so broken.
Yeah, and to an extent, it's sort of it's not generational over here. A lot of fans right now are very new to the game, or even like us growing up watching the sport. Like dad knows soccer, but he's not incredibly like knowledgeable about tactics or anything like that. And so like the way that like we're kind of the first culture that's really dove in head deep into the game.
Head deep's not very deep.
I don't know. Head first. That's what I meant to say. Head first into the sport. And I had one more point. Oh, the other thing is that I think that goes along with that. I think maybe we might be more tolerant of just different fans, because some people, well, I should say myself, because definitely there are some American fans that can be just the same way that specific British fan was being to the lads. There's definitely American fans out there that kind of behave the same way. And if you don't, think the way that I do, or don't pronounce this word correctly, you're just immediately discounted.
No, I don't think Americans do that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they definitely do. But I know that from my perspective, I get that everybody's kind of at a different level of fandom. Some people are new to the sport. Some people might only follow the Premier League and don't even know that there's an MLS team in their own city. And so I think with that just comes along with maybe a little bit more of an understanding that everybody's kind of at a different level.
I get in arguments with my friends all the time who I play on a team with because of tactics and what we prefer. Like some people love the way Barcelona play with their possession. Some people love the counterattack that Liverpool or Madrid have been using. Some people love the defensive stability of someone like Atletico Madrid or Inter, like they were under Mourinho.
Yeah.
Like you just get into arguments over liking soccer, but liking it in a different way.
Yeah, but I'm sure that still happens in England. Yeah. Matt?
Yeah, I would say like like obviously tactics like that. I think that's universal. Like people argue about tactics in every sport, but like here, where like I think like most of the fans love like their teams is like for all sports is because we have like the rivalries and like their whole geographic area where like everybody in Philadelphia just knows if you're a Cowboys fan, like just like
we hate you.
Yeah. Or like at Penn State, if you're wearing Ohio State colors, like you can go to hell. Like I think that's where like you get that like sense of just like unity and really caring about the sport. Whereas like soccer, you don't really get people to care enough like from a geographical area. So like it's not like like the fans aren't really like in unison.
I do actually agree with that the rivalries aren't as hot as they are in other sports.
Well, they're new.
Markets.
Like the NFL has been around for almost 100 years, right? And so soccer, MLS is its 23rd season, right? So I think it's all just somewhat new.
Yeah, I mean, I know in Philly we still hate New York. Like that,
yeah.
It's just ingrained in us in any sport. It
Yeah.
doesn't really matter. But I don't know if it's really because soccer, they're rivals. It's more because the other sports in our city hate the other sports in that city.
Absolutely. And that just comes from the league being new. So,
yeah.
Mark, I don't know if that helped paint any sort of clearer picture if we were all over the place there.
It's painted a picture. But I think the culture you've got there around the EPL is fantastic. Sports for everyone. You shouldn't have to talk about it a certain way, and it's really good to see the game growing globally.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know we're all fans. So, Mark, anything else you wanted to add, either this topic or any other topics?
No, that's everything from me, I think.
All right, cool. Christian, you?
I'm good.
Matt?
Nope.
All right, Christian, you want to recap our trivia question?
In 1950 World Cup, India withdrew from the World Cup. Do you know why?
Okay, Mark, do you want to give your guess?
Because they were not allowed to play barefooted.
Yep. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Everybody knows.
Gotta
Matt?
be the shoes, Mike.
Yeah, and I knew that as well. Christian, that was still a great trivia question. Hopefully,
Wasn't good enough.
listeners out there. Okay.
Yeah, I'm angry.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully, listeners out there got the question. Okay. We are on apologies for that. We are on a moving desk, and Christian is changing the height of the desk as we speak. Mark, first off, thank you for being here. Where can people find you, either on social media and Game Day Tourist online?
Well, thank you for having me. I can be found on Twitter and Instagram. I'm Game Day Tourist, and my blog is at gamedaytourist.com.
Everybody should definitely go check that out. Mark's doing some really cool things. Do you have any specific trips planned coming up?
I'm off to Croatia in about a month, so I'm hoping to see the big derby between Hajduk Split and Dinamo Zagreb. So that should be good.
Awesome.
And if people do look me up online, I'm interested to know what it's like to watch sport in your area and your local team.
Awesome. That's really cool. We'll definitely have to check back in on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So with that, everyone, thank you for being here. We will have links to all of the stories we discussed here in our show notes, and we'll also tweet them out from our Bros Talking Soccer Twitter handle, which is at BTSoccerPod. If you want to get in contact with us, our email is bros.talking.soccer@gmail.com. And go check out our website. We have a website now, brostalkingsoccerpodcast.com. You can read about Christian, myself, and I. Check out past episodes and much more. Also, we record this thing live on YouTube. Did I leave out
read
Matt?
about Dave, me, or Dave.
Sorry. You can also check. You can also check out Matt. Okay, take it easy. You're very loud. You can also see Matt stuff. Also, we record this thing live on YouTube. So search Bros Talking Soccer. Subscribe to our channel so you're notified when we are live. With that, Christian, Matt, Mark, thank you guys for being here. Listeners, thank you for being here, and we will talk to you next week. See you, everyone. All right. Good stuff, guys. Anybody still watching on YouTube, which I don't think we have, but see ya, everyone.